it's kind of harsh, but I definitely agree with it that, like, if you're not willing to accept your child any way that they are, then
Not
you
a child.
shouldn't have a child
Do
because
not
you
have
don't know
a
how
child.
they're gonna be.
Yes.
And if you're not, and same thing with, like, if you're not prepared for them to have any sort of cognitive delay, if you're not prepared for them to have any sort of condition at all, like,
Yeah.
don't do it because you don't
Yes.
know, and you
Yeah.
need to be ready to support them, and I think that needs to be like, I wish we could have, like, preconception classes and be like,
Yes.
"Here
Yes.
are some guidelines that you need to go through."
Yes. Welcome to the Tea On, where we sip tea and we talk about things, preferably things that matter. Are you Queen? Queen. I love it. Especially because it's kind of like it's early-ish. What time is it for you right now?
It's 10, so
That's
it's not too early, but the mornings are hard when you're alone. I'm like, "Oh, it feels early."
I
Yeah.
know. I am like starting to commit to like actually getting up before 8. So I've been getting up at like 7:55. But baby
Oh,
steps.
nice.
So that's fine. But
That
anyway,
counts.
enough about me. Today I am here with somebody who I just admire so deeply on like a human to human level. I feel like we've been in each other's lives for quite a while now, right? We like went to college together, but to see you evolve into such a beautiful version of yourself, and so like you just pour so much light into the world. Even when I feel like I'm like, are you giving the light to yourself? Because how could you possibly have that much to gift? But aside from being like a fitness instructor who gives these classes that are just like bursts of joy in like 45-minute to 60-minute intervals, but also you are a nurse and you have such a plethora of knowledge, especially when it comes to what we're going to talk about today, which is an incredibly important topic that you yourself reached out to me in terms of like using just any sort of platform that anyone has right now to voice this kind of thing. I think is so important, and that's definitely why I was like, yes, we need to do this. But without further ado, please allow yourself to introduce yourself and let the people know who you are.
Yes. Hello, I'm Jamie. So yeah, like Jasmine was saying, I'm a nurse. I'm also an exercise scientist. So through that, I've had experience with a lot of people with traumatic brain injury, spinal cord injury, and just around in different things. But I get like too passionate over certain topics that I feel aren't being discussed enough. So that's what brought us here today. So I have like a whole bunch of stuff that I want to get through that are like important things. So I'm gonna just dive into it. So like, unless you want to introduce our
Yeah.
topic.
Well, yes, let's first we should immediately say what we're talking about before she like literally schools us, because I'm so excited, because I was telling you earlier about how typically with these interviews I can participate to some sort of conversational extent, but I think with this I really just want to give you the space to say what you feel is the most necessary, because I unfortunately alongside the rest of much of our society don't know some of the things that you're going to be presenting to me. So I'm so excited. But we are going to be talking about just the experience of the health world for LGBTQ plus community in terms of like myth, just misconceptions, and the trials that we don't even realize they face when it comes to just receiving healthcare and receiving proper medical attention. And I want to immediately say that one of the reasons why I was so like, oh, we absolutely need to talk about this, is because he messaged me saying a lot of trans people experience not getting mammograms, pap smears, and prostate exams for more reasons than one. Obviously, they can be turned away, but this leads to the trans community having a massively higher number of cancer than the rest of the population, which I was just kind of like, that is like, my mind is unable to wrap itself around that. So setting the table for what it is that we're discussing today. First and foremost, why are you so passionate about this? How have you cultivated so much knowledge about this?
So like the reason I went into nursing is that I want to help people, and I was kind of through research, but it wasn't enough. I was like, and I like instant gratification, and research takes a long time. And I was like, I want to help people now. And like so many people are focused on just like the general adult population, like how many general practitioners do we have? It's insane.
Right.
But then like even in my classes, like I always knew that there were these disparities, but then like through my classes we would have guest speakers come in who spoke about their own experience, and it was just like mind-boggling how they don't talk about this enough. And even hearing the views and opinions of my classmates who were going to be nurses, which I'm calling them out right now, but like just like these are going to be healthcare professionals, and there's such a lack of knowledge and just compassion, but mainly the knowledge gap. And it's like even putting your own values aside, and like I was saying, I get too passionate about certain things and I kind of dive wholeheartedly into them, like it will consume my life. And like cancer is a really big thing in my own family. Like almost every person on one side of my family has had or died of cancer. Right. And then I was just looking at the numbers and I was like, these statistics don't make sense, that like the LGBTQ population makes up such a small portion of the overall population, right. but they make up the majority of the homeless population, and like the disproportionate amount of people getting cancer, and also the insurance issues, which that's a whole other story that I went way overboard with, but I got important information with it.
Please. Oh my God. Yeah. So it comes from your soul, basically. I feel like wanting to help, and especially recognizing that there are certain communities and marginalized communities, especially, that need that help, that need that intention. So I think first and foremost, just opening it up, what are some of the things that people don't even realize are happening?
Yeah. So a big issue that, and I think this is kind of what sparked it, is insurance coverage, because insurance is a mess. Like I'm going through it myself, and I am a straight white woman, so I can't imagine for anybody that doesn't fit this terrible stereotype. But I ended up, like, I was thinking, okay, looking at, and like I follow a lot of trans people who post their experience, and I love it because I'm just like, this open dialogue is great, and I learn a lot, and it's important going into healthcare field that I know these things, and knowing how to ask questions in a way that's not triggering, but that you can get the knowledge. So yeah, I was like, okay, how does this work? Say somebody is transitioning female to male, but they still have, I mean, some people just choose to keep their reproductive organs the same, right? And that's totally fine, and that doesn't change or like diminish their experience of being now a male. Right. But how does that work in terms of getting a pap smear? And that was something that I was like, okay, like how would this work? So this is kind of where I went overboard. I actually called 4 different insurance companies in Florida, and I like put myself in those shoes. Yes, like I completely fudged it all and was like, yeah. The experience was terrible. So I was like, automatically, I can't imagine. And so many people were just confused. And I was like, say I was a female, but I'm going through a transition now, and I'm transitioning to become a male, but I still have my uterus and ovaries. Right. And they were like, so you're not a male. Right. And I was like, that's not how it works. No. So I ended up asking, like, if I have a driver's license that now says male, the insurance has to match your driver's license. Right. So if I now have a male driver's license, which would then, when we talk about like gender dysphoria, that would be like a little bit validating to finally have a driver's license that matches, of course, who you feel you are. Now your insurance has to match your driver's license. Right. So yeah, and then there's also the law, which I wrote down the name. It was from the Florida DMV in 2011, the gender reassignment requirements. So to get your driver's license changed, you have to just have a letter from your physician that you are transitioning. That could mean hormones, that could whatever it might be. Right. Nobody at the DMV knew this, shockingly. So they told me, they were like, so to have your driver's license changed, then no, you don't have like those parts. And I was like, that's not the case. And they argued with me. So they told me no. They said if your driver's license says male, you don't qualify for a pap smear. You don't qualify for a mammogram, because if you're a male, you don't have those things. And the one woman flat out told me that.
But could you imagine, and this is just you putting yourself in the shoes of somebody who's transitioning, but like imagine actually being that person who has all of these like awful such a well of emotion, and to be triggered in that way just because people don't even realize they're triggering, but it's so insanely, it's such a disconnect from like understanding what a human being could possibly be going through, and to not, what's insane to me, I'm so sorry to immediately go off on a tangent, but
no,
like,
do it.
it's insane to me that there is no sort of training or no sort of like if you are taking any sort of leadership position in any of these places, in the DMVs and in any sort of like medical facility, it's like, how are you not introduced or trained to the language, to understanding how to handle this, to understanding what the proper protocol is? You know, obviously there's some sort of like, there needs to be something in place in order to have the patient feel safe and actually have something in place for them to get what they need, because then we have disproportionate, you know, data, and that doesn't make any sense to me. I just don't understand it, truthfully.
There's no reason for it. And that was the thing too with the insurance companies. Like you were saying, if you're in a leadership position, if
Right.
you are the one distributing these plans, collecting the money, you should
Right.
know the things behind it. And every single place I called had to get their manager, because
Right.
they were like, one woman, I loved her. She was like, that's a really good question. She's like, and I wish I had an answer, but I don't. So let me see if I can get one for you. And I was like, and she asked people, she Googled stuff, and then she came back and she was like, I don't have an answer for you, so I'm going to transfer you to somebody who might have one. And she was like, but thank you for bringing this to my attention. And I was like, yes.
Yes, thank you, because that's a human response. I feel like everything has become so robotic and so cold, and I'm like, how do we not realize that like we are here for each other? And it's important. I think that response in itself is very beautiful, because it's important to recognize that like it's okay to not know how to handle this, because we unfortunately have lived in a society that hasn't made it nearly accessible or nearly known as enough. But if you are in that position of leadership and you do realize that you don't understand, make the effort to, and like acknowledge that you don't, and take the steps towards learning from that, so that when the situation happens again, you can make that person feel safe and actually give them what they need to know, which I think is so important. So that would bring me to I guess the first sort of will of action, which is we need to be talking about this more in order for there to feel like there's some sort of urgency to fix this. So how can we start shifting to a space where like this is more known? Like, what do we need to be talking about more in regards to this?
So I think people not being afraid to ask questions, like that we need to just have more of an open platform. And like a lot of people on YouTube are doing that, and I think it's awesome. Like I've learned so much from watching some of these YouTubers, and I think not being afraid to ask those questions. But I think also, like, especially a lot of people going through the trans experience, like there's going to be a level that you're going to want to protect yourself, and you should. So I think it's gonna take a long time, that we need to get the general public able to ask questions, and then have people of trans experience feel comfortable with people asking. But it comes back to also like the healthcare providers. Like we had 2 classes where we had guest lectures that discussed all the different titles that kind of go with queer, and like all the different titles that could go under that umbrella. And I mean, classmates just saying this is too many, and there's no way that somebody can feel this way, or just call it what it is, it's this, or and
these are people who are going to go into the medical, and I just don't understand, because these are the people that are handling us, you know?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And it's upsetting, because I feel like at least most people who just go into the medical field are heroic in the most authentic sense of the word. Like you are actually walking with the pure purpose of helping and really facilitating healing for people. So it's like, if you could have that be what's leading you, how could you not also have this perspective of like, we need to respect each other and understand each other? I don't get that, you know?
It makes zero sense. But yeah, like the conversation, more education,
Right.
Like especially in medical school, I think there's even less of a conversation, because nurses have the most contact with more people.
Right.
But who's ultimately treating people? And so there's just like that ultimate lack of knowledge. And then it also comes back to acceptance. So like everything's one giant terrible circle. Because so like when we look at the numbers, it depends on where you look. Our census was obviously a disaster, so it's hard to gauge some things.
Yeah.
So looking from 2011, the LGBTQ population made up approximately 3.8% of the US population. The more recent data, these are all from the Williams Institute from UCLA. They kind of handle all of this data. So now, as of 2017, they say about 4.5% of the US population identifies in the LGBTQ category.
Right.
So that's a hearty percentage, and people are like, oh, it's 4.5, but it's like, look at the actual number of people, like it's a lot of people.
Right.
But then 41% of LGBTQ people have incomes below or at 139% of the federal poverty level. So when we look at the idea of getting insurance below the poverty level, not able to get it, like it's awful. And then also poor, like this was from the American Cancer Society, literally listed as a reason, poor experience with uninformed providers turn people away from continuing to get insurance and go to the doctors.
Well, yeah.
I'm like, it makes sense.
Totally.
So, and then the youth, and these are all like a bunch of numbers, but they kind of form that whole circle, that LGBTQ youth represent 40% of the homeless youth population.
Right.
Even though they make up 7% of the general population.
Right. Which
So
is,
then,
so I've known about this statistic, and I've still, do you have any more insight on like why that is? Because I don't understand how the number is so disproportionate. Like, I just don't understand it.
So parents kicking their children out is like the most obvious, but also sometimes if a child, youth under 18 chooses to leave because you're in an unhealthy environment, but there's also less resources available. Like, I mean, when we look at homeless shelters, when youth are living in a homeless shelter, a lot of times it's as moving as like a family unit into a shelter, but adults can go into a shelter. But if you have like a 14-year-old, are you going to go into a place like Camilla's house? Like, those are very so you end up with those weird ratios. But it just kind of draws that whole complete picture that if you start out being homeless at a very young age, you're gonna not have that level of education on cancer screenings, because you don't cover that in any school, which is another issue. And then why would I need to go? And then now I don't have insurance, and now and it's just this giant circle. But the cancer rates are, they put it really well somewhere, and I wrote it down because I liked it. Yeah, they said disproportionate burden of cancer.
Oh my god.
And that's what it is.
Yeah. It's like you said, it's a vicious cycle, because if we're not treating it at the root, which is accessibility, which is resource, which is even just the education on it, and then we take away just even any sort of access to it, it's become like it's a loop. So how do we, I feel like obviously we know how people on the inside can take care of it. It's a matter of like them caring enough to do so. But like what can we do to stop that loop? Because I feel like there's such a like sense of helplessness. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I think there's a few routes. So one, I'm looking from like an educational standpoint, because my sister is a teacher, and then I'm looking from the healthcare aspect because I'm a nurse. So you put the two together and it makes a pretty good circle.
Amazing.
So like education in school, like we need to start breaking the stigma. And it's not about like, which sounds so corny and it's so overused now, like break the stigma, which we do need to do. Yeah. But like just talking about it, making it a normal thing. And I think also like maybe how there's like the I can't think of the words, like when people are pregnant and they're going to like their birthing classes and like their parenting classes before they have a kid, to have maybe even a lesson in there on like, once your child is, you know, old enough to ask them like just telling them from the beginning, like you don't have to see yourself as a boy or a girl, you can see yourself anywhere in between. So and like that's something that kids don't even know until they get older, and half of our knowledge comes from the internet. So it's like
100%. There's such an idea that like that's something that needs to be approached later when they're more developed and where they can understand. But I think people really underestimate kids. I think when you keep them, so we think that they're like these like just like dense beings that can't understand. And I'm just like, I think they could handle that concept so much better and easier than the adults that are stained by their own like ego and preconceived notion can, honestly. And there's something else I wanted to say that was really important, but I will just, oh, well, yeah, a lot of this, everything that we're talking about right now, if it is being talked about, it's typically being talked about within the LGBTQ plus community, right? Which is important, obviously, because they of course need to understand what's going on within, you know, their public and how they can protect and navigate it themselves. But I think it's important that like these conversations are also had in communities and areas where maybe they're not even seen. I think that's even more important. Like what you were saying about in these birthing classes, even if like they're filled with heteronormative couples, I think it still needs to be something that's said and understood. And of course, I believe that like safe havens need to be in place for like only the LGBTQ community, but it's also important that, like whatever's being discussed there also bleeds into just like the general public knowledge, because that's, if we keep it separated, we're not going to understand how to like treat and like deal with each other, you know? But I apologize for interrupting. Please continue.
No, please interrupt me. I go on like these rampages. So yeah, like making it, and I completely agree. Like, especially the community needs to stand with the community, and there need to be, there still needs to be separate things to make every unit stronger. But kind of blending the lines, like you can have both. And I think we kind of draw the line of like, this needs to be that, and this needs to be here. And it's like, we need to just make things normal. Not normal, I hate that word, typical. We need to make everything more typical, that it's just everything blends together. So I think the education right from the get-go of, and I don't think that it's, and this is my personal opinion, and I don't know if I should say it, I don't think it's wrong if you're like, I'm having a boy. Because some people are like, you're having a baby with a penis. And I'm like, you don't have anything else to call it right now. I would call it because I'm not good with kids. But like, you could just
little aliens, like, I know,
I'm like, biologically right now, it's a boy. Like, it might see itself another way. So like, I think also like sometimes we kind of get like so worried about saying the wrong thing that I'm like, I'm like, that little alien in your tummy right now, that's a boy or that's a girl. I'm like, but once they're born, they might not be, and that's fine. So I think like making things not scary, because people then get worried about the opposite of like, oh my gosh, I don't want to offend anybody. And I'm like, if you come from a good place, I don't think it's that easy to offend people if you come from a good, genuine place.
Everything should be defined by intention. And I feel like you just brought up such a beautiful point with even you being apprehensive about sharing that opinion, because truthfully, I think most people feel that way. And if they don't, it's understandable. It's okay to feel either way that you feel about it, but as long as it's rooted in like, no, this is how I understand it to be. I can hear your perspective and know that I'm not trampling or wanting to be offensive. It's just sort of like, there needs to be some sort of like middle ground, I would say, in terms of like navigating those kinds of things. But I think it's important that we do feel okay to, like you said, not be so hyper aware of being offensive, because then how do we have a conversation at all? If I'm too scared to say how I view it, coming from my experience and coming from my seat of perspective, then how can it shift if it needs to, if that makes sense? So I totally...
No, it makes total sense. You're walking on eggshells constantly, and you can't have authentic conversations on eggshells. It doesn't work like that. You kind of have to crush them a little bit.
I know, that should be like the subtitle of like just the show. Like, you just can't have authentic conversations on that show. But yes, please continue, because that was a beautiful point. Absolutely.
So like the education aspect, also moving into schools, like I was saying, like being comfortable with like first day of kindergarten, like and I mean, it goes back to even like letting people dress the way that they want to, but that's a whole separate thing. But it goes together of just like letting people be people and not letting people just be genders. So like, just, hi, I'm a human. Sometimes I wear skirts, sometimes I wear pants, I wear a stick-on mustache. Who cares? Like, so I think in our education system too, like, if teachers have more of an understanding, maybe they could be kind of like bridging the gap and being more aware of watching out for stereotypes, and maybe like picking up on the bullying of somebody saying like, well, why are you carrying the blue lunchbox, you're a girl, like just those little things. So I think it's got to start there. And then in healthcare, like, it's also maybe a nurse's job when the parent comes in for like their checkup when they're pregnant, to be like, hey, you know, and I think it's kind of harsh, but I definitely agree with it that like if you're not willing to accept your child any way that they are, then you shouldn't have a child, because you don't know how they're gonna be.
Yes.
And if you're not, and same thing with like, if you're not prepared for them to have any sort of cognitive delay, if you're not prepared for them to have any sort of condition at all, like don't do it, because you don't know, and you need to be ready to support them. And I think that needs to be like, I wish we could have like preconception classes and be like, here are some guidelines that you need to go through.
Yes. Oh my God. Thank you for like, if you are not willing to show up however this kid presents themselves as, or you know, whatever they come born with, it's just like you should not be reproducing. You just should not. And I think that's such a wow. Oh my God. How can we put that in place? Like, how can we actually like have guidelines? Like, if you're gonna be a parent, like, check.
I would love to figure that out.
Like stimulated like just like situations, or like your kid comes out as pansexual, what do you do? And like if they fail it, they just like can't, and they get their like sperm taken away. I don't know, but I get you.
Be like, here, you get a dog instead. Sorry. Yeah, like that would be the ultimate first line of defense, but I don't think that's gonna fly in our lifetime. As much as it would be fantastic.
Everything.
So moving through like education, there we go. Moving through the healthcare system, especially in pediatric visits, it's really important, and they teach us about this, but you rarely see it in practice, to actually speak to a child no matter their age without the parent in the room, and let things come out honestly and authentically. Because you get a lot more information from them when the parent, even if they're BFFs with their parent,
of course,
like there's still going to be stuff. And I think that could also be like a first line to kind of pick up on if there's an issue, and maybe finding resources for that kid and starting to like head them in the right direction. So then that kind of brings us like, you know, growing up a little bit farther into adulthood, which still leads us with the insurance issues and then the cancer issues. So I kind of want to dive a little bit into like gender dysphoria.
Go ahead.
And like how like invalidating that it can be. Like, say you have transitioned, but you by some miracle have insurance that's going to cover your pap smear. Are you going to go in and sit comfortably identifying as a man in an OBGYN's office and being called in for your pap smear? You know you're going to get judgmental looks from the staff. You know you're going to get judgmental looks from everybody there, because that's our society. So it starts with like the babies and working our way up to rebuild society, which is going to take forever.
I know.
But
you're such an Aquarius. Sorry.
I don't know if I've shown you my Aquarius tattoo. That
I see it when I take your classes, and I'm always like, I always tell my mom, I'm like, she's an Aquarius like me. But even that is a really like, that's such an Aquarius perspective, because it very much is like revolutionizing an entire generation and like revolutionizing our society from the roots. But I think also what's very Aquarius about it is like knowing that even if it'll take forever, I'm gonna do my part while my vessel is still here. You know what I mean? Like I'm gonna make sure that I'm at least contributing to it. But yes,
that's kind of like my whole life purpose, is like I want to feel like I've made a difference, and that's it. When people are like, what is success to you? Success to me is like feeling like I've actually done something for people who need a voice. Like the 40-year-old white male with a Tesla, like I don't need to speak for him, he's fine. Like
represent.
So then like gender dysphoria, like you're going in and it's just like, I mean, we know gender dysphoria takes treatment, that it's not something that's cured, it's something that you learn to deal with, learn to cope with. It's like anything like PTSD, like it's always there, but you learn how to acknowledge it. And I think that these are just experiences that are going to just kind of throw it in your face and bring it right back, because we don't have healthcare settings that are not, again, like just made for people. They're made for gender. You go to the OBGYN's office and it's for people with vaginas and uteruses to go get their pap smear done. And sure, like your general practitioner, like also picture identifying as a woman and going in to get a prostate exam. Like,
I know.
It would just be like, I cannot put my, like, as much as I can empathize with people, I just can't imagine to the fullest extent how just dissociating that would be. So kind of like, if you get any big donors watching this, a big dream in this world, I think it would be great to have a clinic that is just for people. You just make an appointment. It doesn't matter what your gender is. It doesn't matter what it is. Like, if you put that you're there for a prostate exam, I'm not going to care if you walk in with giant boobs and blonde hair. I'm going to care that you walked in and told me that you needed a prostate exam. Like, just needing these services in an environment that, like, people know is safe, but then also for affordable services, which then the question always comes up of, like, how are you going to run a whole business on that, which I hate money because it ruins everything. But
we could talk about this for hours.
It's awful. But that's where I think we would need to, again, like, spread the word. Like, I was kind of a side note, but I got involved in human trafficking research because that's a whole other area that is not talked about enough. So I got involved with that. And I was lucky to get involved in it and kind of stay involved, and I learned a lot from that too. And we actually ran a simulation, so I was playing the human trafficked victim. We did work trafficking, sex trafficking for nurse practitioner students to see if they could recognize it. And fun fact, like 98% couldn't recognize it, which we are first responders, so if we have to report it, and people didn't pick up on it. But we presented this research, and there were, like, it was big, like, schmoozy donor things, and people, it, like, struck a chord with some people, and they donated because we were doing, like, I was volunteering. I was in the middle of school, stressed out of my mind, but I volunteered because it was important. So now people can get paid, and now they can spread the word, and they're going to work on implementing this with TSA agents, police officers. So it's really cool. Like, they're going to spread it, because TSA agents especially, that's I'm getting so off topic, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Please.
So I think it goes back to the same kind of deal. Like, as much as money sucks, like, we need to pick up the attention of people, but I think we can't pick up their, like, unfortunately, change a lot of times is rooted in fear. And even though, like, change it'd be great if it could be rooted in, like, excitement instead of fear, of, like, excitement over change, not I need to change this because I'm scared. But I, like, if people saw these numbers, and, like, the numbers are out there, but there's not, like, one place. Like, I was doing so much research to find all these different numbers and find all the different things. But I think if people knew, maybe even then, how it's affecting their life, because people are selfish and they need to hear how it's affecting them for it to matter. But if they learn that, like, I mean, look at employees who keep it a secret, and now your employee is out, and maybe, like, because their insurance didn't cover their screenings, and now they have cancer, and you're down by an employee, and you're wondering why it happened. So
it's sad that you would have to break it down for people to, like, empathize then, like, oh, but it's going to immediately affect your source of income. But I mean, if that's the approach that you have to take, it's upsetting. And what I do want to build on too is we live in a world that is run and led by money, and it's unfortunate. But what I can say is that money is powered and defined by the intention behind it. It fuels so much evil, but it can also fuel evolution and healing. And, like, if people really heard this and decided to pour their abundance into building something like this, or contributing to this, we could actually we could turn the page a bit. And what I also want to say is that I don't know if you've ever considered, like, being the head of something like that, like, just like a medical haven for humans and people, not defined by gender, but just defined by being these, like, little alien people that are living on our earth. I would just push you towards the direction of, like, knowing that you are capable and the person to do that. But
well, thank you. I don't think I could. I get way too emotionally invested in things. When it comes to, like, actually doing things, I'm like, and the business side stresses me out. Like, when I had to pitch that whole thing with the human trafficking to these like really wealthy, famous donors who were all there, and I don't think I can say names, but I was like, I hate this. I was like, you should donate because this matters. And it was like, it works though, because I got way too emotional, and everybody was like, it works though, and I was like, that's good, because I was like, I'm sweating because I get so passionate.
Of course, I think if you had the people to hold the weight of, like, the business aspects, and I think you just, like, let your heart speak on the parts that mattered, that would be great. But, you know, take your time. You'll have, like, the epiphany at some point. I see you doing it very easily. So, like, we'll come back to this when you have it open.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to, because and that's why
Like a
I'm starting
shelter.
my work. Yeah, and just like you were saying, I love that, like, a haven for people,
Yeah.
like, just medical services, like,
Yeah.
and I mean, like, birth control, like, hello, can we talk about birth control? It's a nightmare in this country, like, I'm so thankful for it, I love birth control,
Yeah.
but, like, when, again, just looking at this same population, there's just so much stigma that it's like, well, I'd rather just not go and get this, and,
Right.
like, I'd rather not deal with this, and I don't want any of these to sound like generalizations, because
Right.
it's so not the case.
Of course.
But they're just more issues and more things that just need work. But yeah, I would love, that is kind of like what it all comes down to, is like,
Yeah.
we need healthcare that's available for humans, regardless of their situation, regardless of how they identify. I'll ask you for a driver's license so I can get your name. I don't give a rat's ass what it says about your gender. Like, I want to know what you're there for. So I think we have a lot of work to do in education. We have a lot of work to do in healthcare, and we have a lot of work to do as a society, but we gotta, like, crush the eggshells. We have to open up the conversations, and, like, I don't know. I think, and like, people only care when it affects them. I've had to explain that with mask wearing to people endlessly, that, like, how it's going to affect them, because when I just say that, like, you could be giving it to someone's grandma, they're like, I don't know that grandma, and it's like, and I'm like, well, you don't, but which I'm like, wait, I empathize with everybody, so I'm like, grandma, and it's not my grandma.
I know, like,
but,
you're like mourning this like fictional grandmother, but like,
yes,
yeah.
So I think, like, it's unfortunate, but having to twist things to kind of fit people's personal agenda, even though it sucks, it might be a place that we would have to start to get some sort of ball rolling.
Oh my God, which is so boring, but very true. We've seen that play out with this pandemic, especially. But
oh yeah,
you have just, I think I'm gonna be processing this for the rest of, I would say the day, but also just like my life. I wanted to close up with, if you have any like organizations or people that you want to shout out. I'm gonna pull this up while you talk, because I have a dear friend who is trans, and she runs this like organization. I'm gonna pull it up and I'll talk about it. But
okay, I also need to find the names of some people that I would definitely like to mention. Ugly camera angle here.
No worries at all. I'll say that.
But also,
go ahead.
Sorry. No, like, I mean, the Trevor Project, it's huge, but like, it just, like, they put out so much good information that I think it's just a very easy single resource, because people like things to be easy also. True Colors United has a lot of helpful things as well. The American Cancer Society has a lot of facts, surprisingly. And then the National Center for Transgender Equality kind of has all of the information that you would need on, like, how to get legal things in order, which was, like, I think that's a huge thing. They have, like, a knowing your rights section, and they and you can find, they also have, like, a scanned version of the document, so if anybody gives anybody a hard time on what you need to change your driver's license, there is a scanned version of the mandate on the internet, so you can get the mandate that is signed with the Florida number and all of that.
Right? Oh, that makes me so happy. And honestly, I think it's so important that you even mentioned, like, knowing your rights. I was going to mention that at some point and I forgot to, but I'm glad you reminded me, which is that it's really important that you do know how you are legally protected when you walk into these spaces, especially with dealing with people who are ignorant and just can kind of, like you said, not have the purest agenda. So know your rights. Also, Carmen Cristina Garcia, she has this organization. It's called Care Nyc, and they basically they offer free pre and post-op care and services for gender affirming surgeries for transgender, and it's completely free. It's just they're also looking for volunteers if you are in the New York area, but I really wanted to shout them out because I see you followed them.
I saw your post on your story, and I started following them immediately, and I was like, we need this everywhere. Like, it's amazing that they were able to do it.
Yeah.
And we need it everywhere. I was like, holy moly, like, I don't know these people and I wish I did.
Yeah.
Because I adore them, and I don't know who any of them are.
Yes.
I'm glad that you know them. That's really cool.
Yes. Yeah, no,
I
went to school with Carmen, and when I went to New York, I did an interview with her just talking about her whole experience of just like her transgender journey, and I learned so much. And then to see her step into this role of this, I'm like, not only is this amazing, but you're right, I would love for these to exist in more cities. So if you are watching this and you feel inspired to, you know, they just kind of done it on their own and have pulled volunteers and people who are just willing to help. So if you ever want to start any sort of initiative similar and wherever you are in the world, I would encourage that. But yes.
I wish I knew them, because like I
I
hope
got
to see
you.
this, because like I
I'll
appreciate you
introduce
so
you.
much. I saw it and I was like, oh, I got so excited about it.
Oh
And
my
the
God.
YouTuber that
talk-
I've been following, like I don't know them, I wish I did, is
Yeah.
Sam Switz, SWITZ. I learned so much from his YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Like he transitioned female to male, and I was able to learn a lot, because like he's also just super authentic, and like I found a bunch of people on YouTube, and like that's where the internet can be a blessing as much as it can be a curse.
Oh my God. Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah, like I think just the education, and like I am an open book, and I'm here to say truthfully, like if I said anything that like I could word better, that comes out like less triggering, or anything that I could say that is put in a better way, or like a more conscious way, like I will not be offended if somebody corrects me. Like I am here for it so that I can do better next time. I try to be very like aware of what I'm saying, but again, I don't want to walk on eggshells. So yeah.
I just almost, this happens to me more often than not, but like I just literally almost cried, because I'm just looking at you and I'm like, you're so pure, and like I understand you. I get it. Your intention is so deeply rooted. It's like one of those things, I just like talk about astrology and this completely goes somewhere else, but like I have to look into your chart, but I know, especially just with you having your sun in Aquarius, it's like there's this feeling of like, if I leave this earth not somehow making it better, I wasted my time here. There was no reason for me to be here. Fulfillment is not defined by what is tangible, but rather like just knowing that I did something with my energy, with my time, and with my heart. And that's what you're doing. And it's so, I'm so happy to just call you a friend and to be able to like take your classes and
I'm happy to call you a friend. Like I admire you so much. Like I tell everybody, and I'm like, she's so cool. Like we met in Pilates, and here we are.
I know. And it's so, but thank you, my God. But like, just it's really, really, really comforting for me to know that like you and the people that you influence just with your energy and your words are the ones that are stepping into now these roles as just like nurses and practitioners and people who are actually handling humans, because that is like a sigh of fucking relief. I promise you. I mean, I get it. I get that there are always going to be bad seeds and bad apples, but like if more people who are conscious and intentional and purposeful step into these roles, that's how things shift. And you're making such an impact by talking about it, by being in those positions, and by just existing out loud. So thank you for sharing your voice on this platform. It means the world. I'm so sorry it took so long for us to do this, but I think timing wise, this was the time.
It worked out. It worked out really well. And now I have like a fire under me to like go and start my new job, and it's a really good hospital. So hopefully maybe like being my loud, obnoxious self, maybe we can start to like get some more things moving in a right direction. And like that's the thing. I will talk, yell, scream, shout until I see something done about it. So maybe Iowa City will see some change. Who knows?
Well, you are the change, and you're implementing it and like the ways that actually matter. Like you're not just like tweeting, like you're actually physically in it. And that's, my God, that's all that I could ask for. What let the people know where they can find you and support you and all of that, please.
Yeah, really just on Instagram. My Facebook kind of crumbled. So Instagram is jamie.austin_. So that's where I'm posting everything. You can find my group fitness classes, which is not like a self-promotional thing.
No, I want
they are
to.
free.
That's why I said it.
Like they're free. I get nothing from it other than like enjoyment, like monetarily nothing. Like I do it because I really like it. That's how I can help people on a regular basis, and like I just enjoy doing it. It is a if you couldn't get it by now, it's a non-judgmental space. You will never feel like you can't do it or I don't fit in. Like I used to teach in person in my pajamas sometimes. Like, I mean, like we don't judge here. So if you want to like get a workout in, like please let me know. And I'm here to be your cheerleader. If you're like, I need somebody cheering me on from the side, let me know. I'll be here for you. Just like give me a background so I know what to say, and then I'll be like, you've got this.
Give me a background. No, honestly, you're doing such a service, especially with these classes happening during quarantine. Of like, there have been days where like way too many historical events were happening within one 24-hour period, and I was like overwhelmed by it. And then I would take your class, and like for that hour, it was just pure joy. And it's so purposeful. It's so intentional. So definitely check out our classes. You can do them from anywhere in the world, literally on Zoom. And I'm from my part, I'm just gonna say, I would encourage people to donate. I get that you do them out of the kindness of your heart, but it's important to support each other and like support small businesses. Honestly, that
it's very much appreciated, because I take over my entire apartment and my boyfriend has to sit on the other side of the camera the entire time. So every cent. I know
last time I saw him like scurry in the background and I was like, king. But anyway, I adore you. I love you. Thank you for this.
Thank you.
And yeah, everyone, please support her. Please check her out. Please check out the organizations we mentioned, and also just talk about this shit. Talk about it with your friends, with your family, with anybody that you think could actually do something, which I mean, talk about it with your kids. Just talk.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And teachers and nurses and people who have a large influence, not just on the internet, but in the real world. Because it'll put a seed in their head and it'll be there and you can't shake it. Once it's there, it's always there. And it's just like a new lens. And even if you don't want it there, because then it makes you sad, you're like, shit, I have to be aware of this now.
I have to be aware of it. I can tangent, but people run away from being uncomfortable and like, no, this discomfort is going to help us shift. So be okay with being uncomfortable. Support Jamie. Thank you. And yeah, that's all.